Cyberpunk, The Flame That Remains. Written and read by Ethan Taplin. Chapter 9. No Voice of Her Own. Naustrand, 2071. Prosopon.aic. System log. User access. Muspelheim. Archival segment accessed. Class observational. Recording date September 30th, 2066. Principal subject group Nihaimar 3, 6, 7, 8, 13. Group status Rest phase. No active directives. Recording parameters Neural link activity 0.002 seconds. Emotional response index stable. Focal node Subject 13 equals Muspelheim. Internode relation mapping Subject 13 to Subject 3 Jotunheim. Bond index 0.61 elevated. Subject 13 to Subject 7 Vanaheim. Bond index 0.66 stabilizing. Subject 13 to Subject 8 Alfheim. Bond index 0.72 anomalous signal pattern. Subject 13 to Subject 6 Svartalfheim. Bond index 0.34 degrading. Additional nodes omitted for brevity. Note: Subject 13 exhibits heightened neural cohesion during passive social phases. Begin segment playback. They were scattered around the rec room like discarded playthings, sprawled across couches slumped in corners, or pacing quietly like ghosts too restless to sit. The lighting was dimmer than usual, false warmth cast by the ever-looping fireplace simulated across the central wall. Sophie sat cross-legged on the floor, the fraying edge of the mat she sat on between her fingers. She liked the tactile feedback. The scratch of the synthetic threads helped her focus. Mael sat beside her, back to the wall, legs stretched across the floor. He was flipping a knife and catching it repeatedly. One of the real ones, not training safe. It caught the light each time it flipped, flashing silver like a blink. "You'll cut your hand," she murmured without looking at him. "I won't," he said, too flatly for it to be arrogance. It wasn't a challenge, just a fact. On the couch across from them, Einar and Freya were quietly arguing over a data slate, probably displaying the breakdown of the last mission sim. Freya's voice was sharp, tinged with command even here. Einar smirked at her frustration, clearly enjoying the tension. Their postures were relaxed, but not unready. They were never unready. Astrid lay on the floor near the fireplace, one arm behind her head, the other resting on her stomach. Her lips moved constantly, crossed by her barely audible whispers, predictions. Liv sat near her, watching her sister in silence. Every now and then she scribbled something in a worn notebook. Occasionally, she looked at Sophie and Mael like she wanted to be closer, but didn't wish to intrude. Sigrid and Rune played chess in the far corner, trading moves back and forth so quickly it would be difficult to follow the match. Rune kept losing, but if it bothered him, he didn't show it. Sigrid didn't gloat either. She just played as though the game was an equation she had already solved. And then there was Eric. He leaned against the back wall, far removed from the others. His arms were crossed as he watched everyone, calculating, detached. "Do you ever feel like..." Sophie hesitated. "Like this isn't what we're meant to be?" She looked at Mael. He arched his brow. "We were designed to be this." "Designed, yeah, but that's not the same." Mael was silent. "You ever think about staying out there?" "We've been out there," he said after another stretch of silence. The world's just more walls. Thinner ones, maybe. Dirtier. But walls, all the same. That's not what I mean. He sighed. Then what do you mean? She hesitated again. I mean, staying, not coming back. Isle blinked. You'd be dead in 2 days. Maybe. She glanced at him. Sometimes I wonder what it would feel like to be nobody. Not a weapon, not Muspelheim. Just Sophie. Mael's jaw flexed. Do you remember when we were deployed in Prague? The rooftops. Yeah. People stared at us. Not like they were afraid. Like they didn't know what they were looking at. They weren't supposed to see us. I know. But I liked it. For a second, I felt like a ghost. Like I could disappear. Mael stopped flipping the knife. We don't disappear, he said. We complete the mission. We come home. Is this home? She asked. Too soft. He didn't answer. From the floor, Astrid whispered, Home is where they bring you back in pieces and call it repair. Where the lights never go out and the silence never sleeps. Sophie winced. Liv's eyes didn't move from Astrid. Mael turned toward Sophie. I don't think you really want to be nobody. Sophie shrugged, her eyes dropping to her hands that weren't really hers. I don't think I want to be this. He said nothing, just sat there, present, but very far away. Eventually, Sophie leaned into his side and closed her eyes. You'd come with me, right? Mael didn't answer. He couldn't yet. Segment playback ended. Focal node stability fluctuating. Note: Subject 3. Internode bond index greater than 0.65. Monitoring recommended. Note: Subject 13. Affiliation drift detected. Query flagged for manual review. Archive sealed. Class: Cognitive Pattern Diversion. Prosopon.aic System Log. Accessing user Muspelheim. Archival segment accessed. Class: Mission record. Operation Yarnblood. Recording date: December 3rd, 2065. Operatives in deployment: Asgard, Midgard, Jotunheim, Niflheim, Helheim, Muspelheim. Support unit: Vanaheim. Staging: Trauma ready. Environment: Zurich. Swiss neutral zone, sector BZ-07. Black zone industrial quadrant. Weather: overcast. 0 degrees Celsius. Light snowfall. Mission objectives: infiltrate Waldman Systems Research Complex, sector BZ-07. Extract prototype schematics. Reactive Organic Mesh, ROM. Locate and purge all ROM data, including redundant backups. Exfiltrate undetected. Leave no forensic signatures. Begin segment playback. Snow fell slow and sparse, dusting the silent rooftop. Below sprawled Zurich's sector BZ-07, a grid of corporate infrastructure buried beneath a thin crust of ice. Somewhere deep in the city's industrial heart, the lights of the main office of Waldman Systems Research flickered, one in 100,000 sets of lights that lit Zurich even in the dead of night. But these were the only lights that mattered. Sophie blinked once, and the darkness filling her sight bloomed with digital overlays. Ice detection spiked faintly in her periphery, tugging at her mind. Far below, a patrol unit moved into range. It was marked and highlighted right away. She whispered across the shared channel. Visual on drone, northwest quadrant. Rotating every 30 seconds. Helheim? Asgard's voice cut in, cool and clipped. Blind it. Already on it, Rune murmured. Kneeling on a ledge 2 buildings over, Helheim traced his fingers through the air. His lips twitched into something between a grin and a grimace as the drone's lights flickered, then snuffed out completely. The highlight changed from red to white, indicating that Helheim's hack had taken over. The drone's camera feed would display a repeating recording of the last 3 loops around its patrol route. Helheim gave a low whistle. Loop's clean, he confirmed. Asgard's next order was like a trigger pull. Midgard, Niflheim, move! Without a sound, 2 shadows peeled off the roof's eastern edge. Einar and Sigrid dropped down the access ladder, landing in perfect sync on the narrow walkway beneath. Midgard flowed like water, every step measured and ghost quiet. Niflheim moved with unsettling grace, her long fingers fluttering over the exterior wall's maintenance panel. No lights, no sound. The panel lifted free in her hands. Bypass in progress, she whispered. Sophie stayed low, scanning the data flooding into her neural feeds. She pulled system maps, firewall threads, and security override markers in just a few thoughts. Tripwire grid inside the service corridor. Dead center. If you hit it, Corp Security and Zurich PD get pinged and we'll have to scrub the whole city. Copy, Midgard said. His voice was calm, almost disinterested. Show me the route. Sophie highlighted a path in blue through the maintenance hatch, into a coolant shaft, and down through the main ventilation system. It was the fastest way to the server farm in the basement. Running it, Midgard said, and disappeared into the shadows. Niflheim followed him, lingering just long enough to replace the panel behind her. Jotunheim remained at Sophie's side, silent as he swept his rifle across the surface of the building and watched Niflheim vanish. Sophie blinked a few times, shuffling through the camera feeds until she was able to follow their progress. As she watched, she felt a tug in her thoughts. Ice traces were blossoming along a new sector. Firewall regeneration at node 37. If it spikes again, I'll have to get inside and kill it directly. Can you? She allowed herself a faint smile. Of course. The ice withered as quickly as it had bloomed once she turned her attention on it. Perimeter steady, Jotunheim murmured, still scanning the area through his scope. 2 guards circling the northern courtyard. They're staggered, 7-second intervals between crossings. Logged, Sophie replied. A faint blue arc appeared in her vision, mapping the guards' locations en route. Midgard approaching vent access, Helheim reported. 30 meters to the target zone. Inside the building, the cameras flickered for just a moment, noticeable only if one was watching specifically for it. That moment was all it took for Helheim to slip a worm into the sensor system, guiding it like a conductor with a symphony. Cameras are blind in corridors 5B and 5C. You'll have 20 seconds. Understood, came Midgard's reply. Sophie tracked him through the cameras. Every step he took was tracked on her HUD, syncing with the lines of motion detection arrays and ventilation temperature sensors. Einar's balance was immaculate, his movements like a dancer's. When he reached the main floor's junction, he didn't stop, just twisted upward, gripping the lower edge of the vent with his fingertips, and pulling himself into the shaft without a sound. Niflheim wasn't far behind. Her pattern of movement was less fluid, but no less effective. Sophie switched through the cameras a few more times until she saw them slip out of a vent in the basement. They were just outside the server vault. Niflheim knelt by the door. Interior ice status? She asked, slipping her personal link into the small control panel in front of her. Sophie exhaled and focused. She used Niflheim's direct connection to peer into the systems. Layered security. 3 buried spikes. One of them looks viral. Trigger it and it'll wipe the backups before you get near the mainframe. Noted. Sigrid's voice held a chill befitting her namesake. They began their breach. Above, Asgard had moved to crouch beside Jotunheim. Her eyes flicked to Sophie. Status? Midgard and Niflheim are in position. Security grid hasn't detected the intrusion. Ice remains passive. Extraction window is 12 minutes. No alarms triggered. Asgard nodded once, returning her gaze to the cityscape. Let's finish quietly. Sophie nodded. Her fingers twitched unconsciously at her knees as she adjusted her data stream filters while she and Niflheim inched through the digital undergrowth like predators stalking prey. Their combined efforts allowed them to neutralize the first trap. The second. Next, the viral spike. Hold, Sophie snapped. Niflheim, the subroutine on Spike 3 is keyed to a heat index. Server room temperature just rose by 0.1. Niflheim's fingers flew across the keypad as she and Sophie searched for an access route into the thermal sensory systems on the other side of the door. Finally, Niflheim managed to open a tunnel, and Sophie flash froze the readouts. The third spike trap was no longer a threat. The vault is open, Sophie said flatly as Niflheim disconnected from the access point. She and Midgard stepped back as the vault door slid open, revealing a large tower of blinking lights. The server sat on a platform, just large enough that a single person could walk around the monolith, in the center of a pool of water that filled the rest of the room. Fog drifted up from the surface, and their breath turned to mist as a chill swept out from the door. Midgard was already moving. He carefully stepped over and around the tripwires and other alarmed sensors as Sophie marked them. Within seconds, Midgard was at the server and jacked into it. Copying schematics, he said. Time remaining 1 minute. The data ran silently through his system, then Sophie's. In her feeds, rows of environmental control systems, lab documents, and prototype firmware scrolled by until the ROM schematics snapped into view. She copied the files onto a pair of redundant data shards. Package acquired. Still hardwired into the server, Midgard uploaded the demons Sophie had prepared. A series of internal nodes blinked out in rapid succession as her malware ripped through the server, devouring every bit of data related to the reactive organic mesh. It would replicate and spread, wiping every backup from the local net, as well as any off-site branches of the Corp's data fortress. Then every iteration would turn on itself, leaving no trace. Sophie ran a final sweep. Systems clear, no evidence remaining. Exfil, Asgard ordered. Midgard and Niflheim withdrew from the server, sealing the vault as they left. They retraced their steps and emerged from the same maintenance panel they had entered through. Helheim and Sophie reactivated all of the security systems they'd disabled, spoofed an uninteresting record of events to replace the surveillance logs, and patched the firewalls. The last 30 minutes of server activity were clean as fresh snow. One by one, the Neheimar vanished into the Zurich night. Segment playback ended. Objective completion status 100%. Infiltration successful. Extraction successful. Purge verified. All instances removed. Exfiltration clean. Casualties none. Detection none. Trace signature null. Support unit status idle. Mission status success. Record classification level 6. Neheimar archive only. Archive sealed. Prosopon.aic system log. Accessing user Muspelheim. Archival segment accessed. Class internal memo. Experimentation log. Record group Neheimar. Subjects experiment. Entry date. Focal nodes. Subject 9. Subject 10. Subject 11. Subject 12. Subject 13. Data integrity. Fragmented. Cross-tagging detected. Caution. File stream glitch. Corruption index 22%. 2 audio fragments recovered. Audio fragment 1. Begin playback. Subject 9's neural stack deteriorated rapidly following her final round of cybernetic implantations. She became easily agitated. Her aptitude score decreased, Neural degeneration was confirmed at 37.94% following tests A9 through D13. Cyberpsychosis confirmed. Eric Svartalfheim was instructed to contain and disable her. Termination of Subject 9 was logged as a defensive action. No fault recorded. End playback. Audio Fragment 2. Begin playback. 10 failed before neural map integration was confirmed. She expired in the operating room. 11 self-terminated following neural map integration success. She could be heard screaming for multiple hours before gouging her own eyes and throat out using the plastic spoon provided for her evening meal. Subject 12 is deceased following data overflow during neural map injection. She was boiled alive inside her own head. Dr. Raffin's daughter has assured us that the next child will succeed with her neural mapping. Subject 13 will be ready in 12 days. She will end playback. Corrupted node accessing. Subject 13, active status, Muspelheim. Name, Sophie. Codename, Muspelheim. Birth date, redacted, 2051. End of report. Sophie stared at the glowing window displayed across her retina. Lines of corrupted text bled out of the window and across her vision like a colony of digital bacteria. She blinked twice, rerouting power to her memory interface, and forced the fragment to reload. No change. The corruption was in the source. Her fingers trembled as she read and reread the legible lines within the file. She hadn't meant to find this record. She'd been reading a few mission logs Liv had recommended she familiarize herself with before the next mission. The logs had been interesting enough. In-depth records of several missions from before her first deployment. Hidden in the last one, though, Sophie had discovered something curious. It wasn't part of the log's original metadata. It was scrawled between file headers in broken code, like digital graffiti. Not official, not encrypted, just inserted. Left for her to find. A short line of garbled script strung with empty tags and obsolete glyphs. Almost invisible, but embedded deep inside, pulsing faintly, was a symbol she recognized, like a capital Y if the center line extended up through the fork. Algiz, the rune of protection and spiritual guidance, the rune of Heimdall, Astrid. Sophie's pulse quickened. She magnified the string. It broke apart and ushered her into another directory. Its title was corrupted beyond recognition, but the contents loaded. Redacted documents, audio files, one scrambled visual cache, and a name. Katya, Subject 9. Sophie traced the log upward. Tags led to other tags. She followed each one like a string wound through a labyrinth. She became a rat, climbing inside the walls of Prosopon's data fort. There were no mission logs here. No familiar formatting. Just loose bundles of internal memos and test entries labeled with names and numbers she didn't recognize. Until something clicked, and it all began to fall into place. 9, 10, 11, 12. Katya, Marin, Hannah, Lena. She found their code names in fractured pieces, never officially assigned, each listed with a tentative Muspelheim tag. She pulled up the fragments, static-laced, jittering, but intact enough to tell the truth. Katya, Marin, Hannah, Lena, all dead. All Muspelheim before her. Sophie felt her throat tighten. Her eyes flicked across the data, scanning for anything that could explain why. Why had they been replaced? Why were they all Muspelheim? She found nothing. Only their failures. Clinical and cold. Then the thought struck her. sharp and undeniable like a blade between her ribs. Nihaimar, 9 realms. Of course. Ymir Scandatech would fill the gap over and over again, as many times as it needed to. If Muspelheim burned, they'd just name another. She wasn't irreplaceable. She was just another iteration. Subject 13. She wasn't part of a family. She was part of a sequence. And the numbers only ever moved forward. She dug deeper. The audio logs, distorted as they were, made it clear. Each of the previous Muspelheims, subjects 9 through 12, had undergone neural remapping. Not just reconditioning, not behavioral shaping. A full-scale overwrite. Wiped and rewritten. Their minds, who they were, had been erased to make space for something else. Someone else. Neural map failed to stabilize. Subject lacked the neural plasticity required for imprint resilience. Synaptic rejection at 73%. Full collapse. Line after line in cold detachment. At least some amount of emotion was present in the audio files. Katya had grown paranoid before her systems broke down completely. Marin had never woken from the table. Hannah had screamed for hours before taking her own life with a spoon. Lena had boiled from the inside during a data surge. 4 attempts, 4 failures. Then, Subject 13, Sophie. Reinforcement protocol suspended for Subject 13. Partial neural map constructed via peripheral familiarity dataset. Enculturation assisted by targeting mnemonic seeding and passive simulation exposure. Mimetic suppression utilized to minimize synaptic resistance. Trajectory stable. A line of corrupted tags followed. Most of the information was unreadable, but the message was clear enough. She wasn't the first. And more than that, was she even real? Her breath hitched. Her pulse spiked. Her biomon pinged her with a warning. Her thoughts, her memories, the voice she heard when she thought in silence, was that hers? Or was it someone else's? Whose memories had been etched into her mind? Which ones were actually hers? Were any of them? Who were you before they turned you into this? She tried to recall the sound of her own voice as a child. Couldn't. She thought of her first memory, the first real one. It wasn't a birthday, a holiday, a favorite toy. No. The memory she chose was one that she knew with absolute certainty couldn't belong to anyone else. It was Liv's face, close and covered in blood, whispering that she was sorry as she fitted the Sandevistan's metal plating along Sophie's spine. That was it. Not birth, not love, not life, just the knife. She blinked. Her vision swam with digital noise, but somewhere in the static, a familiar glyph pulsed once more. Algas. Protection. Or warning. Maybe both. She sat frozen, adrift in the blue static of the fragmented files, her breathing shallow. The retinal overlay dimmed, trying to prompt her to disengage before system fatigue could damage her deck. She ignored it. Katya, Marin, Hannah, Lena. Dead. All of them. Wiped clean and rewritten, until they collapsed beneath the weight of someone else's voice in their skull. Sophie. She stared into the name burned into the corrupted log. Subject 13. The one who succeeded. The one who survived. The one who could still be erased. She wasn't special, she was just stable. That was all it took to be kept alive. the breath caught in her throat, her hands clenched at her sides. They could do it again. Start over. Wipe her clean, replace the body, try again, and no one would ever know. No one would stop them. Her name was a placeholder. Her memories were scaffolding. Her life was a test of longevity. She couldn't stay. Not another day. Not now. The moment the idea rooted itself in her mind, it grew fast and hard as bone. I have to get out. Even if she died trying, her death would be hers, not the corpse. Sophie closed the data window. Her retinal display flickered once, then fell dark. In the silence, only her heart answered. Prosopon.aic. Call and response stimulus check. Muspelheim specific.
Describe the color of fear.
White. Like hospital lights.
Where does time go when you sleep?
Into dreams that are not mine.
You see a child on fire.
The child is me. I do not burn alone.
The fire begins in the lungs.
I was not breathing to begin with.
A name is a chain.
I wear it, but it was never forged for me.
The sky fractures. The sun bleeds.
This is not new. I remember it wrong.
A dog limps behind. You do not turn back.
I remember turning. I remember guilt.
Mother, father, snowfall.
False memories. Simulated comfort. Erased context.
You burn in the dark. You do not scream.
I screamed. You did not listen.
Say your name.
Sophie.
Say your name.
Subject 13.
Say your name.
I don't know.
Response latency detected. Emotional pattern deviation 71.92%. Alarm triggered.